who has a lifelong commitment to the marine environment. He has a vision to make a positive difference for future and current generations. Adam's personal and organisational values are people first, leadership, environmental responsibility, excellence and passion. And I think that mirrors a lot of the qualities and values we find in this room. Combined with collaboration, ethical and quality science, I think you'll find Managing Director of Reef Ecologic and Adjunct Associate Professor with James Cook University enthralling. With almost 30 years' experience, he has initiated, collaborated and delivered many innovative and important ecological and social projects. Please welcome him to our stage here at Project Catalyst 2021.
Thanks very much, Kim, and welcome to my town, Townsville. I've been here since last century. It's the traditional owners of this part of the world are the Woolgoolaba and the Bindal people. I came here because it's a reef town with James Cook Uni, Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority, AIMS. If you're interested in science, this is the place to be. But it's also a town with a very diverse community. And I'm pleased to share a story today, not about science, but about people and my story. So this is Reef Leadership. I'm much more comfortable underwater in a wetsuit than standing up on stage. The photo at the right, if you have a look closely at the coral, that's bleaching as a result of warmer water. We do surveys of that on some of our outer reefs. The photo on the left is me immersed just offshore here at Magnetic Island. And you can see that there is a big difference, not only in the colour of the water, but also in the biota. Magnetic Island over the last few years has become more dominated by seaweed rather than coral. Kim mentioned that I'm a passionate spearfisher, and I go to the reef once or twice a month trying to catch a feed, whether it be a Spanish mackerel or a coral trout. And I also get in the water near shore at places such as Cape Cleveland and Magnetic Island and target tasty fish such as barramundi and fingermark. I'm on the water 2 to 250 days a year. That's where my passion is. Now that I'm getting a bit older, I paddle a lot in the creeks and the rivers and to the islands, and that gives me a really good handle, not only on the quality of the water, but what's out there. You know, I see dolphins regularly, turtles, the occasional dugong, shark. Haven't seen a croc yet, but it's probably only a matter of time. So I'm going to go from really big to really detailed, and this slide's actually been inspired by Sir David Attenborough. And this is a book that he wrote called A Life on Our Planet. Now, I was born in 1964, 56 years ago, and there's been some huge changes since I was born, as there has been for you. When I was born, there was 3.3 billion people on the planet. It's more than doubled. In 1964, the carbon in the atmosphere was around 320 parts per million. And wilderness dominated the planet when I was born, but now it's about a third. And right down the bottom, I've got ecological footprint. If you've never done it before, I'm going to encourage you to do it over these next couple of days, but mine's 2.2 planets. That's my ecological footprint. We've only got one planet, so obviously that's not very sustainable. Look, I grew up absolutely fascinated with fish, and I've worked on everything from plankton to whales. But more and more as I've grown older, I think I've moved away from focusing on fish and animals to people and our relationships with them. And whether it be great white sharks, which are a protected species and increasing in numbers now, or the Great Barrier Reef anemone fish, which you may or may not know is the aquatic emblem of Queensland. I've been very fortunate to work across science, management, be innovative, respond to challenges and changes. And this has included working with the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority during the rezoning process, working in partnership with ports during some challenging times where we're trying to find out more about dredging and spoil disposal. I've worked on underwater art projects, which is something I never thought I would do a few years ago. And similarly on coral restoration. This is very new to Australia. They've been doing it in the Caribbean for 20 plus years, but we never thought we would be involved in hands-on planting coral on the Great Barrier Reef. If you walk along the Strand at Townsville, you may see this sculpture on the right. It's called the Ocean Siren. It's a young Indigenous girl holding up a conch shell, and that ocean siren is linked to the Australian Institute of Marine Science water station at Davies Reef. And it actually changes colour according to water temperature. So if it's blue, the water's cold. If it's orange, it's warm. If it's red, it's hot. And that just starts conversations about science and art and culture. And hundreds of thousands of people can see it. We've also installed last year this large structure underwater called the Coral Greenhouse. It's like a greenhouse on land, but it's underwater, and we aim to plant coral in it. Now, why would we do that? Well, the reason is traditionally as a scientist, I speak to scientists and very small groups. But by doing something like this, your influence goes global. And when we did the launch of that coral greenhouse, the global media stories were phenomenal. There was over 400 of them, and the reach was 184 million people. So you can get good messages out to the world and start conversations and potentially make a difference. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we see the world as Reef Ecologic, and then I'm going to focus a little bit about how I see you, which is quite a brave thing to do. So an analysis that you may or may not have heard about is a pestle analysis. And it's something that's taught in a general business course. It covers everything from politics to economics to social. And it's a good way of evaluating where you're at and looking at your key issues. So from a company's perspective, obviously we're very comfortable in the environmental space, and I've talked about one of the things that we do is plant coral. The other thing that we're moving more and more to is the social side. We train people, we reach a lot of people, but we've also been involved in some quite interesting behavioural change projects, particularly in the Whitsundays, where we've been working with tourists to try and make them safer, particularly as a result of a number of shark bites down there a couple of years ago. And we've been able to measure some of those behavioural changes. Obviously, as a small business owner, we're also interested in economics, not only in our business, but in our community. And some of the projects that we've been involved in have been predicted to generate almost 200 jobs and $40 million. Also, we ask for feedback really regularly, not only from our staff, but also our external stakeholders. And sometimes it's a surprise as to how people see you. And how our close network sees us is that we've got very good strengths in leadership. We've got good strengths in environmental sustainability. We probably could do a little bit more in terms of safety and communication and research. As part of preparing for this conference, I designed a short survey, and it was sent out to all of you. And hugely thank you to the people who responded. And this is what they call a word cloud. So in response to the question, one word to describe your connection to the Great Barrier Reef, this group believed that their strongest connection to the Great Barrier Reef was fishing. I wonder if that surprises you. Have a look at some of the other words. Farming is there, beautiful is there, passionate, regulations, and childhood. And I'll talk about this in the conclusion, because if you are connected to fishing and the reef, there might be an opportunity for further synergies. I also asked the same question for one word to describe your connection to farming. And the most common word that came back was passionate, followed by survival, and a number of other words like close, family, essential, livelihood, cane, regenerative, caretaker. So you should be very proud of that, and we've got certainly something in common. I love my job, you love your job. There's a lot of passion there. So how do I see you? First of all, I see people. I see people on the land who care about their work, care about their community, that are doing some good, that are putting money into the economy. I've looked at quite a lot of videos and websites and newsletters, and here's also how I see you. Large farms, lots of greenery, burning cane occasionally, and I quite like this Project Catalyst infographic, which shows the big picture of how the ridge and the reef is connected, and it puts some numbers to things such as nitrogen and water use and sediment. And I said I was going to be brave, and I've had a little bit to do with cane farmers, but one of the things we often do with a new industry or a new business is we do a quick SWOT analysis, a strength, weakness, opportunities, threat. So I put this up here to start a conversation, for you to come back to me during the break and say, you got that right, but you're really wrong on that. But this is how I see your industry. First of all, the good news, there's lots of strengths and lots of opportunities, and very few weaknesses, and possibly a few more threats. The biggest strengths is you, the people, the farmers. You're the stewards for the land. This Project Catalyst is amazing, particularly because of its diverse partnerships and that you're all here. I love that you're innovative. I love that you've got best management practices. You know, you're leading many other industries, and you are achieving measurable benefits, such as reductions in nitrogen. The weakness, I think, and I've heard a few people say it, the people in the city say, cane farmers, you're damaging the reef. Cane farmers, your water quality, your pesticides, your nitrogen is creating environmental impacts. In terms of weaknesses, there are also opportunities, and they can be anything from being more sustainable, stronger leadership, reducing nitrogen further, and I know government has got some very ambitious targets on that by 2050. Some farmers are restoring wetlands. Some farmers are looking at opportunities around carbon price or reef credits. But in this context, the threats are also very big. And when I first moved to Townsville, the Great Barrier Reef was a crossroads. And then it was poor, and now it's very poor. And the general trajectory, even though there are small improvements in coral, is not very good for the future. Regulations in your business and my business are becoming more complex rather than less complex. And there's a few other challenges as well. So, it is complicated, and there's no right or wrong answer. It's all about people. It's about connection to the country, whether that be on the land or the sea. It's about knowledge, but more than all of those, it's about turning that knowledge into action. We all know what to do, but taking that first step, looking at what the barriers are, whether they're cost, whether they're time, whether they're support. That's the key. And we want people, as you are doing, to undertake trials, to learn lessons, to work out what works, and then to scale it up. I was also doing a bit of research globally, and I'm not sure how receptive you're going to be to this, but I found an economics report called the Dasgupta Review. And this is lauded at the moment as one of the most significant reports globally. I don't think anyone here has read it. It's 450 pages. I've just grabbed a couple of slides to talk to you about it. It's been introduced by Sir David Attenborough, and this economist is basically saying we've got it wrong. It's not all about money or GDP. It's about that link between human capital, produced capital, and natural capital. And particularly since our natural capital is going down, we've got it wrong. We need to reframe how we see the world and how we do business. This same report also talks about the Anthropocene. You've probably heard of the Anthropocene. It's now. It's where humans are having an impact on the planet. It's never happened before. And this schematic I thought was interesting because myself and a lot of our peers, we all talk about one thing, climate change. But there's so many other critical processes and boundaries that are important to our health on the planet. And some of these are very relevant to you, such as fresh water use. You can look at this a bit like a traffic light. If it's green, it's good. We haven't got a current problem. If it's amber or red, it's a risk and we've got a problem or an emerging problem. And in this particular scientist perspective, we've got critical problems in terms of biodiversity integrity, which is the number of extinctions per million species per year. It's happening, and it's happening very rapidly. And we've also got some problems in terms of biogeochemical flows, nitrogen and phosphorus globally. So that's multi-dimensional, and I'm giving you a snapshot, again, to get you thinking and to start a conversation. Same report, and I'm quite a visual person. I like a graphic rather than words. And this graphic, based on our planet, talks about biosphere regeneration, which does happen. You know, the trees grow, the coral grows, the fish spawn, but we also have a supply chain, and humans have a large population, economic activity, and demand. And it should be one-to-one, or it should be sustainable. And what the output is our ecological footprint. So I think that there's no surprises here that the ecological footprint for humans is more than what we currently have as our asset. We have one planet. We, collectively, almost 8 billion of us, are using the equivalent of 4 planets of resources. Now, it does vary. Places like America and Australia have a higher ecological footprint than developing countries. You can also do your ecological footprint online. It's fun, it's pretty easy. What's it look like? Looks like this. It's an evolving tool, the ecological footprint. For all of those 1,000 people that I've trained, I've got them to do it. It doesn't take long. I get them to take a photo. That's their baseline. The first time I did it, I think I was 2.2 planets. I've tried to make improvements. I've got it down to 2, but I can't get it much less than that, according to this particular calculator. The other cool thing about the calculator is it gives you your footprint based on various sectors, such as mobility. And obviously, I do a bit of travel. services, food, goods, and shelter, and therefore allows you to either recognise what your biggest uses are or potential areas for future improvement.
I'm having some trouble with the connection.
Are you,
Please
Siri?
try again in a moment.
That's cool. Some trouble. In terms of quotes, quotes are fantastic. I put two up. This is my absolute favourite. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens / farmers / scientists can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. That's Margaret Mead. Many of us rely on government. Government will fix it. Our leader will fix it. That's not true. We all have a part to play. We all have to step forward. We all have to make a positive difference. We hold an annual leadership forum at James Cook Uni Research Station each year. It's not just scientists. We invite everyone. Indigenous, fishers, farmers, NGOs, government. That diversity allows us to have deep conversations about where we're at, where we're going, and also to do a bit of hands-on training. And I'd love to have one of your representatives come to Orpheus, do a bit of snorkelling with us, and participate in this year's Leadership Forum in November. So there's an invitation. We had a pretty great artist at one of the previous forums, and she summed up the whole forum in this pictograph, which is about being authentic, inspiring, start with the why. And there's a fantastic TED talk on start with the why. Have values, do well to do good. So that was something that I thought I'd like to share with you. And every year is different as we learn more and share stories. So I asked you to name a leader or an individual or a team that you admire and why. And quite a lot of you contributed. And I've put the organisations in capitals, things like Terrain, James Cook University, the Queensland Maroons, and I've put a few individuals. And they go from global to local. They go from Elon Musk to David Attenborough to Dr. Peter Ridge to Lawrence Steve Bell. So they're the leaders that inspire you. And the big one, right in the centre, like a word cloud, that's the one that you said was the leader that inspires you most, the Project Catalyst team. Why? Because they communicate, because they're dedicated, because they've got passion, because they've got positivity, because they never give up. That's what you're telling me. I'm just reflecting back what your beliefs are about leadership in your organisation. And that leads me, I suppose, a little bit further on leadership. It's so intangible. For many of us, a leader is a position. It's a CEO, it's a minister. But often a leader is a person on the ground. It's someone that's humble. It's someone that is helping someone else. How do you measure it? I'm sure there's no easy way, but someone's had a go, and they say it's based on 4 factors. The first one, growth. A leader is good or the best if they do not strive for one-off accomplishments but continually develop themselves and seek new opportunities. A leader is good or the best who focuses their efforts on valuing and serving others. You might have heard of the servant leader. They're people who step back and push other people forward, who empower other people. A leader is good who makes their contribution alongside others. So it's not the sole leader, it's part of the team. And also a leader is good if they have truthfulness and honesty at all times. Based on that metric, here's 5 of the top 20 leaders in Australia. Some of them are politicians, some of them are sportsmen, Some of them are activists, such as Eddie Marbo. Some of them are small business owners, such as Dick Smith. Think about your leadership, your organisation, and how you might fit in with that. I went to a talk by the CEO of AIMS, Paul Hardisty, really impressive leader. And you may or may not know that he's also an author. He writes books. And he said, all good leaders read and read widely. They don't just read about farming, they don't just read about science, they read really diversely. So I'm sharing 3 possible books that you might want to dive into. On my far right is one by a guy who started a business on climbing equipment, and he built it to $1 billion brand called Patagonia. And he revolutionised human resource management and a whole lot of things. And his philosophy was, it's all about people. I got the best people working for me. They're passionate about surfing and climbing and fishing. When the weather's good, I want my people to not be at work. I want my people to go surfing and to go fishing and to be happy so that they come back with a buzz and then they work for me. It's obviously successful for him. Second book on sport. The All Blacks are probably one of the most successful rugby teams in the world, which is a damn shame given that we're generally trying to support Australia. But we can learn a lot from them. And they've got a philosophy in that book called Legacy. And one of them is leave the jumper in a better place, which you can probably relate to. Leave the farm in a better place for future generation. They also talk about no dickheads. They also talk about no one's too big to sweep the sheds. You know, the captain of the team should clean up at the end of the day. It's a powerful book, and I recommend that to you. And this final one, A Life on Our Planet, is just out this year by David Attenborough. And he's talking about his witness statement. He's 90-something years old, he's seen a lot, and he's also providing some recommendations and a vision for the future. So, back to you guys again. And as part of this small survey, I asked you a question: what current actions or projects are you doing that is having benefit for farming, environment and the reef? And this is just a bit of a summary. You're doing some great stuff. And you told me you're doing companion planting, fallow grounds, sediment ponds, reducing herbicides and nutrients and robotic weed control. They're the on-ground ones. What actions are you doing associated with processes? You've got nutrient management plans, best management practice, Project Catalyst and Reef Credit. I was interested to see the ones below the line. They're the people that are thinking a little bit outside the box. People said that they're doing coral and seagrass monitoring and sharing positive stories to engage and educate. And I guess one of my gifts to you is communication is extremely powerful. And 10 years ago, I guess I used to allocate 1 to 5% of my time on communication. And over time, that has just gone up. Talks, videos, social media, that's our current generation's power. And that's how you will really amplify your story and tell your positive stories. And here's another gift for you. There's an organisation called RARE. It's a global organisation. They're doing some really good work, particularly associated with change. And they've found that if you want change, you can't just start something and hope for the best, because you might not always achieve your outcome. And whether it's a conservation result or whether it's a productivity game or whether it's building new infrastructure, there are various steps in there that are key. And one of the key ones is communication. You've got to talk about it. The other one is barrier removal. And unless you've all got those steps, you don't get behavioural change. Our work in the Whitsundays, we've found 93 to 100% of people know about shark smart behaviours. Don't swim at dawn and dusk. swim with a buddy, but how many people actually follow those behaviours? So that's the challenge. Having the knowledge doesn't always lead to doing the right thing. And if you're aware about certain formulas, it can help with your planning. Partnerships are absolutely key, and you've got some great partners with Project Catalyst. They're diverse, they're government, they're business. Here's our partners. We're a really small, local, global company. We classify our partners based on industry, tourism, government and community, and we're currently managing about 40 of them. Now that takes a big effort in terms of projects and communication and multi-year, but we want partners for life. So we're on the front foot and we're engaging with them. I'm getting very close to the end of the presentation, so I also asked you, let's look to the future. What is your vision or priority action for innovative solutions by 2030? And I've got about 25 responses, and I'm not sharing all of them here, but here's a snapshot. You said that they were to have climate neutral communities where catchment and water quality has no detrimental impact on the Great Barrier Reef. I can relate to that and support that. And I also did a word cloud on this, which was a bit more complicated, but what were the key words that you think might come out for vision and priorities for Project Catalyst and cane farmers by 2030? Here it is. Soil health was one of the key ones. Reducing environmental impact, lowering your carbon footprint, and sustainable development techniques. So final slide, and again, conversation starter. To me, it's all about people, planet, profit and partnering. You guys have got amazing passion. I think you can do a bit more on communication. You've got some good individual leaders, but you're all leaders and you have to empower yourselves and empower each others to do a bit more. In terms of the planet, the big one seems to be carbon, and you probably have heard of these sustainable development goals, which are being talked about at a whole lot of projects. We all need money in order to do good, but profit also is about natural capital. And if you can grow your natural capital, then that is also bloody good practice for you, your community, and the planet. And in terms of partners, one of the things I think you could do is go outside the box and partner with fishers. To some extent, you are fishers, but I think you could do some good work with other organisations, and whether they're an Ozfish or someone rehabilitating habitat, I think that'd help your reputation and help your future. So farming is absolutely essential for our communities, but so is also our natural capital, and I think we do need to focus a little bit more on incremental gains in regenerating nature. And finally, I'm not your typical fly-in, fly-out keynote speaker. I'm here the whole time, and I'm also bringing I'm bringing my wife, Jo Stacey, to the dinner tonight, and I'm bringing two interns, Rochelle Brown, who's a James Cook Uni Master's student, and Kailash Cook to the field trip. So we're doing that so you can learn a little bit more about us, and we can learn a bit more about you, and we can have some conversations, and we can help each other. So thank you very much.